Hey there, come closer to the fire, because tonight we are stepping into a cabin so cold that sleep does not feel like rest. It feels like a negotiation with winter. Out on the frozen frontier, the first thing you notice is not the silence. It is the breath, your own breath, lifting in pale little clouds and disappearing before it can become anything. The sky hangs low. The ground is hard as hammered iron. A few cabins stand in the snow, rough and uneven, their walls bending a little against the wind like tired shoulders. They are not homes yet, not fully. They are attempts. They are promises made quickly with axes, mud, raw hands, and hope. Tonight, you will learn how people slept when the floor itself froze upward, when the roof groaned under snow, when the fire had to be guarded like a living thing, and when a bed was sometimes no more than straw, a quilt, and the heavy hide of an animal that knew the plains before settlers ever arrived. If these quiet journeys into old hardship help you settle into the night, leave a like and subscribe. It keeps this little cabin lit for the next traveler who arrives cold and curious. Now let the room around you dim. Let your shoulders rest. Breathe easily. We will not hurry. Winter never hurried either. It simply waited outside the door until someone made a mistake. You begin at the edge of a settlement that has not yet earned the word town. There is no bright street, no friendly row of shops, no tidy fence holding the world in place. Only scattered cabins, a shed leaning into the wind, a thin thread of smoke from a chimney, and beyond that, the white openness of the plains. Snow moves across the ground in low, restless sheets. It does not fall so much as travel, pushed sideways by a wind that seems to have business everywhere. Your boots press into the crusted snow. Each step gives a dry crunch, sharp and final. The cold rises through leather, through wool, through the bones of your feet. It reaches your ankles first, then your knees. Then the place behind your eyes where winter leaves its little ache. You pull your coat closer. It helps, but not enough. Nothing helps enough out here. That is the first lesson. The cabin ahead is made of logs cut in haste. They are not graceful logs. Some are too thick, some too thin. Some notched with more determination than skill. The builder had no time to make beauty. The builder had weather behind him, and perhaps a family watching the sky, and perhaps the knowledge that a wall finished imperfectly today was better than a perfect wall planned too late. Many early frontier cabins were built in one frantic season. Some were raised in a few days with the help of neighbors, a practice often called a raising. People worked quickly because the first winter did not care whether a family had enough boards, enough nails, or enough experience. If the cabin stood through spring, that alone could feel like success. You step close enough to touch the wall. The log is cold through your glove. The bark has been stripped, but not smoothly. Splinters catch at the fabric. Between the logs, you see the chinking, a rough packed mixture of mud, straw, moss, and whatever else could be found. In some places, it has cracked. In others, someone has pushed cloth into the seam, maybe part of an old shirt, maybe a strip torn from a garment, already too worn to save. It is not elegant, but it is honest. A house on the frontier is full of small confessions. Every gap admits something. A vent, a weakness, a rush of work done before the storm. You press your fingers near one seam and feel air pushing through. It is thin, but sharp. It slips past the wall with the confidence of a thief who has done this before. Some settlers used moss. Some used grass. Some mixed mud with straw. Some stuffed rags into the cracks each evening when the wind found new openings. Some accounts mention cattail fluff mixed into chinking because it could insulate surprisingly well. Historians still debate how much of this came from European habits, how much from indigenous knowledge, and how much from pure desperation in the moment. Honestly, when your cabin is whistling at midnight, cultural origin probably matters less than whether the hole stops breathing on your pillow. You reach the door. It is heavy, rough, and not entirely straight. A leather hinge strap creaks. The latch is iron cold, so cold it almost bites your fingers when you touch it. You lift it and push. The door opens with a stubborn groan, and a breath of interior warmth comes out, mixed with smoke, beans, old wool, pine, and human closeness. It is not warm by modern standards. It is only warmer than outside. But after the wind, even this smoky half-warmth feels like mercy. Inside, your eyes adjust slowly. The room is small, smaller than you expected. The walls lean inward in the dim firelight. The ceiling beams are raw and uneven. The floor is packed earth, hard, dark, and cold enough to send a chill upward through the soles of your boots. A few tools hang from nails in the logs. An axe, a saw, a mallet, a knife. Practical objects placed where hands can find them quickly. The hearth sits against one wall, the center of the world. A few coals glow there, tired but alive. Someone has been tending them. The fire does not roar. It whispers. It gives off just enough orange light to shape the room, enough heat to pull people close, not enough to make the corners friendly. The far side of the cabin remains cold and shadowed. The hearth is not luxury. It is the difference between suffering and danger. You notice the person beside it first by movement rather than shape. A figure wrapped in wool, half awake, leaning toward the coals with a stick in hand. They stir the embers slowly, carefully, as if waking an old animal that might not forgive rough treatment. A few sparks lift, blink, and vanish. The flame brightens for a moment, then settles again. Maintaining heat was a shared duty. If everyone slept too deeply, the fire could die, and the cabin might wake with frost thick on blankets, walls, and hair. So someone listened. Someone rose. Someone fed the coals. Sleep was never entirely private. It belonged to the whole household, and so did warmth. The wind strikes the outside wall. You look around the room again and realize that nothing here is decorative in the modern sense. A stack of wood in the corner is not rustic charm. It is survival measured in logs. A pot near the hearth is not kitchen atmosphere. It is warmth and calories. A quilt folded over a bunk is not only memory, it is insulation. Even the smoke in the rafters belongs to the battle, irritating the lungs but proving the fire is still alive. A child sleeps in one corner on a narrow platform filled with straw. The quilt over them is handmade, stitched from scraps of older cloth. Some squares are faded, some do not match. The stitches are uneven, but careful. You can imagine the hands that made them, stiff from cold, moving slowly by firelight while the wind pushed against the walls. A frontier quilt was often a family history stitched into something useful. A worn shirt became a square. A dress became a patch. A memory became warmth. The child's breath fogs faintly above the blanket. That small white cloud tells the truth. Even inside, even with a fire, the room is freezing. People often slept fully dressed in cabins like this, sometimes with boots near or on their feet, coats wrapped around shoulders, scarves at the throat, and caps pulled low. It sounds extreme only until you stand in this room and feel the earth floor breathing cold into the air. Someone gestures you toward the place where you will sleep. It is not a bed in any soft, polite sense of the word. It is a low wooden platform with straw piled over it, covered by a rough blanket and a buffalo robe. The robe is heavy. You can tell before you even touch it. It lies there like a dark animal, still holding a memory of heat. You kneel beside it and run your hand over the fur. The texture is coarse, dense, smoky. It smells of hide, tallow, wood smoke, and the outside world. Not clean, exactly. Not unpleasant either. More like survival itself has a scent. And it is this mixture of animal warmth and hearth smoke. Buffalo robes were prized because ordinary wool could fail against deep cold. A good hide trapped body heat with a loyalty few woven blankets could match. You lift one edge and feel the weight pull at your wrist. When you settle it over your lap, the heaviness surprises you. It presses down firmly, almost too firmly, but that pressure is comforting. It says, "Stay." It says, "Do not let the cold steal the warmth you make yourself." Beneath the robe, the straw crackles. You sit on it carefully. It shifts under you, uneven, dry, full of little ridges and points. A sharp stalk presses into your side and reminds you that the frontier was not overly concerned with elegance. Straw bedding needed to be fluffed, replaced, shaken, and tolerated. It could contain burrs, twigs, dust, and occasionally unwelcome, tiny guests. Some families added dried herbs to sweeten the smell or discourage pests. We cannot be sure how common that was. But after one night on old straw, a handful of mint must have seemed like civilization itself. You lie back. The platform creaks. The straw sighs beneath you. The buffalo robe drops over your chest and shoulders with a muffled weight. Cold rises from below almost at once, through the boards, through the straw, through the places where your body does not quite touch enough warmth. Settlers sometimes laid evergreen branches beneath bedding to create an insulating layer. Some used extra hides, Some raised the bed on rough frames, stumps, or planks to escape the frozen earth. Anything that lifted a sleeper, even a little, could matter. The fire pops. Light moves across the walls. Shadows tremble between the logs. For a moment, they look like figures standing in the corners. Then the flame shifts, and they become only beams, tools, cloth, smoke. A low howl rises far beyond the settlement. Maybe a wolf. Maybe wind passing through frozen grass. Someone near the hearth lifts their head, listens, then settles again. There is no panic, only attention. You pull the robe higher. The cold touches your nose and cheeks. Your feet search instinctively for warmth beneath the layers. The air tastes of smoke. A thin draft moves across your forehead, perhaps from the window, perhaps from a crack in the wall. The firekeeper stirs the coals again, and the room glows softly, just enough to keep the darkness from becoming complete. This is sleep here. Not surrender, not ease. A careful arrangement of fur, straf, vol, breath, fire, and trust. Trust that the roof will hold. Trust that the embers will last. Trust that the wall will not open too wide to the wind. Trust that morning, gray and bitter as it may be, will find the cabin still standing. The robe begins to gather your warmth. Slowly, reluctantly, like a cautious friend, your breathing settles. The wind presses its hand against the cabin, then slides away. Somewhere, snow falls from a branch with a soft thud. The fire lowers, then brightens when stirred. You feel the weight of the hide, the prick of straw, the hard boards below, the breath of cold through the wall. And in that uneasy cradle, you begin to understand the settler's first rule of winter sleep. Comfort was rare, warmth was work, and surviving until dawn was enough. You wake before dawn, not because sleep is finished, but because the cabin groans. The sound moves through the walls slowly, like a tired animal gonna quift in its sleep. For a moment you do not know where you are. Then the cold tells you. It is in your nose, your fingers, the stiff place between your shoulders. The buffalo robe lies heavy over you, but the air above it is sharp enough to feel alive. The fire has fallen low. Only a red seam remains under the ash. The room is darker than night should be, with a gray line of morning just beginning to leak around the oiled cloth window. Your breath rises in small white puffs, each one drifting upward and fading into smoke-stained air. The straw beneath you crackles when you move, dry, restless, and full of tiny complaints. You sit up slowly. Your joints feel older than they did last night. That is another frontier lesson. A bad bed does not simply hold you. It argues with you until morning. The straw has shifted into ridges under your hips and shoulders. One stalk has worked its way through the blanket and left a little sore place near your ribs. You brush it away, and for a second, you almost laugh. It is not that the bed was designed badly. It was barely designed at all. It was survival piled in a corner. Across the room, Someone stirs beneath layers of quilts. A bundle that might be a person rolls toward the fire, then stops. Another breath clouds above a blanket. The family is not fully awake, but the cabin is. The logs pop softly. A draft moves under the door. The roof gives another low creak. You pull the robe around your shoulders and stand. The earth floor is colder than you expect. It presses through the soles of your boots like stone. In many early cabins, floors were simply packed dirt because proper boards took time, tools, a sawmill, or money. Sometimes families lived that way for months, sometimes longer. A floor like this could be swept, patched, sprinkled with straw, or dusted with lime in some places to help with dampness and insects. But it never stopped being earth. You take a step. The ground is uneven, hard in one place, powdery in another, faintly glittering where frost has gathered in the night. The smell is smoke, dirt, old stew, wool, and cold wood. It is not pleasant exactly, but it is grounding. It says that this cabin is still here, that the night did not take it. At the hearth, the firekeeper is already moving. A hand reaches from a quilt, takes a splinter of kindling, and lays it on the red coals. Then another. The person bends close and blows. Not too hard, just enough. As you tremble, a thin orange thread appears. It crawls along the wood, hesitates, then catches. The little flame brightens the face beside it. This is how a morning begins. Not with birdsong, not with coffee steaming politely in a clean kitchen, with the careful rescue of heat from ashes. If the fire died fully, the household might spend miserable time trying to restart it with numb fingers and damp fuel. So the coals are treated like treasure. A single ember can feel more valuable than a coin when the door is rimmed with ice. You walk toward the wall. Now that daylight has begun. The cabin shows its flaws without mercy. The seams between the logs look wider than they did last night. Some of the mud chinking has cracked. Near one corner, straw stuffing has loosened and fallen to the floor in a little brown heap. Through a narrow gap, pale light enters, thin as a knife. You press your fingers near it. The wind pushes back. Logs shrank as they dried, and winter made those gaps worse. Settlers often built with green wood because waiting was impossible. The cabin had to stand now, not after the timber had politely seasoned itself. So the walls changed as they lived. New cracks opened. Old ones widened. Families patched them again and again, with mud, moss, old clothing, dried grass, whatever could slow the air. You find a strip of cloth near the door, stiff with cold. Someone must have used it before. You fold it, press it into the gap, and feel the draft soften. Not disappear. Soften. On the frontier, victory often came in very small sizes. The door latch is rimmed with frost. You open it. Morning strikes your face. The outside cold is so sharp that the cabin suddenly seems warm behind you. The settlement is pale and still. Smoke rises from two nearby chimneys in thin, uncertain lines. Snow has drifted against the cabin wall. The sky is dull, and the horizon looks as if it has been rubbed away with ash. You step out. The snow crunches. That sound is louder in the morning quiet than it should be. The cabin looks rough from outside, almost fragile. No paint, no trim, no softness. Just raw logs, a low roof, smoke, and determination. Around the base, you can see where snow has packed against the walls. In some places, that snow helps block the wind. In others, it threatens dampness when it melts. Even protection can become a problem later. Frontier life enjoyed little jokes like that. You walk along the wall and examine the chinking. Here is mud. Here is straw. Here is moss. Here is a shred of fabric pushed in by fingers that were probably freezing. You imagine someone doing this in the dark, half-dressed, teeth tight, trying to stop a draft from cutting across a child's blanket. Survival was not always dramatic. It was often a tired person pressing dirt into a wall at midnight. You duck back inside quickly. The interior receives you with smoke and weak heat. The fire has grown brighter. A pot has been moved closer to the flames. Someone hands you a tin cup with warm water. You hold it in both hands. The metal is dented and thin. Steam rises in a pale curl, smelling faintly of iron. You sip. The warmth slides down your throat. Small but welcome. The family begins to wake. No one has much privacy. A single room must serve as bedroom, kitchen, sitting room, workshop, sick room, storage room, and shelter. Blankets shift. Someone coughs. Someone reaches for a boot. Someone mutters because the boot is nearly frozen, which is a reasonable complaint and probably not the first of the day. Winter made closeness necessary, but closeness did not always make people cheerful. Long nights, short tempers, hunger, smoke, coughs, and the lack of any private corner could wear down even the kindest household. Still, people endured. They had to. The cold outside was less forgiving than the person snoring beside you. You look toward the sleeping corner again. The straw bed seems different in morning light. Less mysterious, more practical, and somehow more uncomfortable now that you can see every uneven lump. Beside it lies a small bundle of green pine boughs. Settlers sometimes used evergreen branches beneath or near bedding for insulation, freshness, or simply because pine smell made a rough room feel less stale. Some families believed pine helped keep away illness or bad spirits. It is debated how common such beliefs were, but the scent alone must have been worth something. You lift the boughs. They are cold and fragrant. The needles prick your palm. Resin clings faintly to your glove. You place them near the bedding and imagine a family refreshing their sleeping place with whatever the land still offered in winter. Pine against damp straw. Hide against frozen boards. Breath against the dark. Then you look up. The roof beams are uneven, thick in some places, narrow in others, cut by hand and placed under pressure. Snow lies above them. You cannot see it from inside, but you can feel its weight in the sound. The roof gives another groan, long and wooden. No one speaks for a moment. Then the sound passes. On stormy nights, settlers sometimes woke repeatedly to listen for roof strain. Heavy snow could threaten a hastily built roof, especially if the pitch was shallow or the timbers weak. Some families brushed snow off when they could. Some used poles from below. Some simply listened and hoped. Hope is not a building material, but out here it was used often. A small breakfast begins. Last night's beans are warmed in the pot. A piece of cornbread appears, dry at the edges and stubborn in the mouth. Hunger changes the meaning of food. No one expects variety. Food must stretch. It must fill, warm, and last. In winter, meals can become repetitive. Beans, cornmeal, dried meat if there is any. Stew that tastes like yesterday because it is yesterday, only hotter. You take a bite. The cornbread is hard, smoky, and faintly sweet. The beans taste of salt and pot iron. The fire warms your knees while your back remains cold. You turn slightly, trying to balance your body between two climates, which becomes one of the daily arts of cabin life. Outside, the settlement begins to move. A door opens. Someone carries a bucket, already freezing along the rim. A horse exhales white clouds near a shed. An axe strikes wood with a dull, steady rhythm. Life continues because it must. Winter may stop many things, but chores are not among them. Inside, you begin to understand the cabin more deeply. It is crude. It smokes. It leaks. It groans. It holds frost inside its own walls. The floor is hard. The bed is difficult. The window trembles. The roof worries everyone. And still, it is safety. Last night, it stood between you and open cold. Tonight it will be asked to do it again. You sit near the bedding, running your hand over the quilt. Its patched surface catches against your fingertips. The buffalo robe lies folded nearby, heavy and patient. The straw beneath waits to complain again when someone lies down. The hearth glows a little brighter now, its flames licking at the blackened stones. You feel the pattern of survival forming. Repair the cracks. Guard the fire. Save the candles. Stack the wood. Warm the food. Share the room. Sleep dressed. Keep tools close. Listen to the roof. Listen to the wind. Trust nothing entirely, but use everything. The morning is not comfortable, but it is yours. A strip of light grows stronger behind the oiled cloth window. It turns the room amber and gray. Frost at the base of the wall begins to dull, not melting fully, only losing its sharp shine. The fire sends up a low crackle. Someone adds another log. The room accepts the small gift and brightens. You settle back on the edge of the straw platform. The cabin no longer feels like a strange place you entered in the dark. It feels like a hard teacher. Every seam gives a lesson. Every object has a reason. The earth floor says hurry and endure. The roof says listen. The hearth says, "Tend me." The bedding says, "Gather what warmth you can, and do not waste it." Tonight, when the cold returns with its long fingers, you will know more than you knew before. You will know where the draught enters. You will know how to stir the embers. You will know why the robe must be pulled high, why the straw must be fluffed, why a tin cup of warm water can feel like kindness. You will know that the settlers did not sleep because winter became gentle. They slept because they learned the cabin, and slowly, piece by piece, made it fight beside them. The cabin has taught you its first lesson. Shelter is not the same thing as comfort. Now your attention returns to the bedding. Because on the frontier, a bed was not simply where a person slept. It was a small invention against the cold. It was a pile of decisions. A map of what the family owned, what the land offered, what could be spared, and what could be carried through another winter. You kneel beside the buffalo robe again. In the clearer light, it looks even heavier than it felt last night. The fur is dark in some places and lighter in others, rubbed flat where bodies have pressed into it over many nights. Smoke has settled into the fibers. So has the smell of tallow, earth, and animal warmth. It is not the kind of scent that belongs in a parlor. It belongs in a room where survival has stopped pretending to be tidy. You slide your fingers through the coarse hair. The hide resists your hand at first, then opens slightly, dense and thick. It traps warmth close to itself. No wonder people valued it. On the open plains, a buffalo robe could mean the difference between shivering until dawn and sleeping in short pieces of real rest. Wool blankets helped, yes, but wool alone could fail when the cold pushed through the cabin seams and rose from the ground like water from a dark well. The robe has its own memory. Long before it lay across a straw bed, it belonged to a creature made for the plains, a body built to stand in wind, snow, and endless open distance. Now that old natural armor has become human shelter, there is something solemn about that. A wild life turned into a quiet roof over sleeping ribs. You lift one corner and settle it across your shoulders. The weight falls at once. It presses down with a firm patience, not soft in the way modern comfort is soft, but reassuring. It tells your body to keep the heat it makes. It quiets the shiver in your chest. Your nose remains cold. Your cheeks remain cold. But beneath the robe, a small pocket of warmth begins to gather. Beside it lies a patchwork quilt. You unfold it carefully. It is uneven, but strong. The squares do not match. One is faded blue, one brown, one pale as old milk, one still carrying a pattern of tiny flowers. Each piece was probably cut from something else. A shirt too worn at the elbows. A dress with a torn hem. A child's garment outgrown and saved because out here cloth had a second life, then a third, then perhaps a fourth if the stitches were stubborn enough. Honestly, I have always found old quilts more moving than grand monuments. A monument says a name wanted to be remembered. A quilt says someone was cold and someone else kept working. The stitches wander. Some are small and careful. Some grow wider where the maker may have been tired, or where firelight was poor, or where the needle met a stubborn seam. You can almost see the hands, stiff fingers near a dim hearth. A woman or a man or an older child sewing after chores, after cooking, after carrying water, after the day has already taken more than it should. A frontier quilt did not only warm the body, it carried the household. You spread it over the straw and notice little repairs. Patches over patches. Thread that does not match. A corner reinforced with rougher fabric. A dark stain near one edge that might be smoke, or spilled broth, or some story no one wrote down. Objects like this keep secrets in plain sight. Near one seam, you catch a faint, dry scent. Something like sage or old grass. Some families used herbs in or near bedding, partly to freshen the smell, partly to discourage insects, partly because certain plants felt calming during long nights. How common that was is debated, and we should not make it sound more certain than it is. But it is easy to imagine someone adding a handful of dried mint, lavender, saye, or pine needles to bedding, because even a small, pleasant smell could make a hard night kinder. You sit on the straw platform. It answers with a crackle. The sound is sharp, dry, and strangely intimate. Every shift of your weight wakes another tiny chorus beneath you. The straw has clumped where people slept. In one place, it is thick and springy. In another, it is thin enough that you feel the plank below. You press your palm down and feel broken stalks, small knots, rough bits of stem. A bed like this has moods, and not all of them are friendly. You lie back slowly, testing it again in daylight. A ridge presses under your shoulder. You shift. Another lump rises under your hip. You shift again. The straw seems to rearrange itself in protest. Somewhere inside it, a sharp point finds your sleeve. This was common. Straw mattresses needed constant shaking, turning, replacing, and airing. Without care, they flattened into hard mats, gathered dampness, and invited pests. Some settlers laid evergreen boughs beneath the straw. Some placed hides under it. Some raised the bed with rough wooden frames, stumps, or planks. A few inches of distance from the frozen earth could matter. Cold does not need permission to enter the body. It only needs contact. You roll slightly and smell pine. The small bundle of boughs from earlier has been tucked near the side. The scent is clean, resinous, and faintly sweet. It cuts through smoke and old hide for a moment. You imagine a settler returning from outside with arms full of green branches, shaking snow from them, then laying them beneath bedding in the hope that the night might be less cruel. It is a humble hope, but most useful hopes are humble. Beside the straw bed rests another ticking, a cloth mattress stuffed with feathers. At first, it looks more inviting. It has a rounded softness that the straw lacks. You press it with your hand and feel it sink unevenly. The feathers shift away from your palm in a soft rush, then gather somewhere else. It is warmer and gentler than straw, but not perfect. Feather ticks could clump. They could flatten. They could hold smells. Quills could poke through the fabric and surprise a sleeper at the worst possible hour. You sit on it. The whole thing sighs under you. Not a human sigh, but a dry, whispering movement, as if a small flock of birds is rearranging itself inside a sack. You lean back, and the feathers slide under your weight. One side lifts slightly. The other collapses. You find yourself smiling, because even luxury on the frontier came with a sense of humor. A feather tick had to be shaken and beaten. Children often helped, gripping the ends and snapping it back and forth if there was room, or dragging it into the open air when weather allowed. Loose feathers had to be pushed back inside. Seams had to be repaired. A leaking mattress could turn a cabin into a small indoor snowstorm, only made of down. Which sounds charming until someone has to collect every feather before it sticks to the stew. Not every family had feathers. Some used grass-filled ticks, or hay, or whatever dry material could be gathered and packed into cloth. Grass could smell fresh at first, then sour if it held moisture. It flattened more quickly than feathers. It needed replacing. Still, it was better than bare boards, and bare boards were better than frozen ground. The scale of comfort was narrow, but people learned every step on it. You lift a small cloth bag from near the bed. It is used as a pillow. Inside, something dry and uneven shifts. Perhaps grass. Perhaps old cloth scraps. Perhaps feathers not fine enough for the mattress. It smells faintly of smoke and herbs. You place it under your head, and under Ilike, and once, that frontier pillows were more symbolic than persuasive. Your neck accepts it because the alternative is a folded coat. And out here, the body becomes very good at lowering expectations. Now, the clothing enters the bed. A wool shirt hangs from a peg. Heavy stockings are folded beside the platform. A coat lies near the foot of the bedding, ready to become another blanket if needed. Many settlers slept fully dressed in winter, sometimes nearly in everything they owned. It was practical. Taking clothes off meant the clothes became cold by morning. Putting frozen cloth onto a warm body is a special misery that civilization has worked hard to avoid. You lift the wool shirt. It scratches your fingers. It smells of smoke, sheep oil, and long use. The fabric is thick, but not soft. Warmth mattered more than softness. A person might wear one shirt, then another, then a vest, then a coat, then wrap feet in cloth, then climb beneath quilts and hides. The body disappeared into layers until it became a human bundle. Barely able to turn without planning. You try it in imagination. First, the shirt, then the coat, then the stockings, then a scarf or cloth around the throat, then the quilt, then the buffalo robe. Your arms feel heavy before you even sleep. Movement becomes slow. If you turn too quickly, cold air enters the folds. So you learn to move carefully, like someone carrying a bowl filled to the brim. This is the intimacy of frontier winter. You do not defeat cold once. You negotiate with it constantly. You seal the neck. You tuck the feet. You pull the quilt under the shoulder. You press a knee into a warmer place. You learn where the draft crosses the bed. You learn which blanket belongs on top. You learn that the cold always waits for a loose edge. The room darkens slightly as cloud covers the sun outside. The window cloth glows pale, then dulls. The fire keeps working in the hearth, orange and low. A faint draft touches your cheek. You pull the buffalo robe higher and feel the weight settle over the quilt. Heat begins to build slowly between the layers. That slow building is important. Nothing here warms instantly. The bed does not welcome you like a modern mattress in a heated room. It must be persuaded by your own body. The robe must trap what you give it. The quilt must hold. The straw must insulate. The platform must keep you from the earth. Your clothes must become part of the room. Sleep begins as labor, then becomes rest only after all the small defenses are in place. You lie still. The straw beneath the quilt no longer feels hostile, only uneven. The robe presses on your ribs. The wool scratches lightly at your wrist. The pillow is lumpy. The air stings your nose. Yet under the layers, warmth collects. Not enough to forget winter. Enough to continue. And perhaps that was the real genius of frontier bedding. It did not make winter vanish. It made winter bearable by fractions. A hide here, a quilt there, straw lifted from the earth, a scarf at the throat, a dog at the feet if the family allowed it, a stone warmed later near the hearth. Each thing small alone, but together forming a fragile nest inside a hostile world. You rest with your eyes half closed. The cabin creaks. The fire answers. Snow brushes the wall in soft grains. The robe grows warmer over your chest. Your breathing slows. And for a moment, the bed feels less like a pile of scraps and more like a burrow made by human need. Outside, winter still owns the plains. Inside, cloth, straff, fur, feathers, and stubborn hands have built one narrow pocket of life. Soon that warmth will not belong to one sleeper only. In a cabin this small, heat must be shared, and night will draw everybody closer to the next. In a cabin this small, warmth does not belong to one person. It passes from body to body, from breath to blanket, from shoulder to shoulder, until the whole sleeping corner becomes less like a bed and more like a little settlement inside the settlement. It may sound awkward now. It was awkward then, too, surely. But winter has never been especially interested in manners. When night falls, people move closer. Children are tucked between adults where the heat is strongest. A tired father lies along one edge, a mother along the other. Children bundled in the middle like small loaves set carefully near an oven. If a hired hand sleeps in the cabin, he may take a place near the outer edge of the bedding. If a traveler arrives after dark, half frozen and shivering, the household makes room, because refusing shelter in such weather can be a sentence no one wants on the conscience. Hospitality in winter is not decoration. It is survival with a human face. You sit beside the bedding and imagine the arrangement. Shoulder against shoulder. Knees bent because the platform is too short. Someone breathing too close. Someone whispering an apology before climbing under the robe. Someone else muttering that it is fine. Just keep the draft out. A child turning sideways and planting cold feet against an adult's leg with the complete moral confidence children possess when they are freezing. There is humor in it, because there has to be. A family might joke about who stole the blanket. A traveler might warn that he snores. Someone might claim a corner and then slowly migrate across the whole bed during the night, like a small, determined continent. But beneath the irritation is arithmetic. One body makes heat. Several bodies make more. In a cold cabin, that is not sentiment, that is physics, dressed in wool and trying not to kick anyone. Some accounts describe families sleeping lined up together, close enough that turning over required cooperation. Children were often placed where the warmth held best. Dogs could curl at the feet if allowed. In some households, the family dog may have been less pet than furnace with opinions. It is debated how common animal sharing of beds truly was. But when the wind is cutting through the wall, even a muddy dog starts to look like a practical blessing. You imagine the bed after everyone settles. The buffalo robe lies over the top, heavy and dark. Quilts are tucked along the sides. Coats fill gaps. The straw beneath compresses under many bodies. Breath collects in a little cloud above the pile. The room grows quieter, not silent, never silent, but quieter. The small noises of people preparing for sleep begin to fade. A cough, a whisper, cloth shifting, a boot pushed aside, a child asking one last question, then being told softly to hush. The hearth glows. The fire is the heart of the cabin, but it is a frail heart. It needs tending. It needs wood, attention, and judgment. Too little fuel, and the room freezes. Too much fuel, and smoke may roll back from the chimney, or sparks may jump where they should not. A frontier fire is not a modern switch that obeys instantly. It is a living arrangement, sometimes cooperative, sometimes moody, always hungry. Someone must stay aware. The watch may not sound formal. It may simply be one adult sleeping lightly, rising when the coals sink too low. In some households, people took turns through the coldest part of the night. One person wakes, stirs the fire, adds a log, listens, waits, then curls back into the bedding when another stirs. It is not dramatic work. It is dull, repetitive, and essential. That is often what survival looks like when no one is painting it later. You kneel beside the hearth. The coals are red beneath a skin of ash. You take the poker and touch them gently. Ash lifts, pale and soft, drifting like gray snow before falling back. A small orange glow opens. You add a sliver of kindling. It smokes, darkens, and catches. Then another piece. The flame licks upward, uncertain at first, then steadier. Heat touches your hands. Only your hands. The rest of you remains cold. That is another truth of these cabins. The fireplace warmed unevenly. The person nearest it might feel their face grow hot while their back froze. Corners stayed cold. Floors stayed cold. The air near the roof collected smoke and some warmth, while the sleeping bodies below gathered what they could under hides. Fireplaces often lost a great deal of heat up the chimney, but settlers used what they had. Complaining about physics did not improve the fire, though one suspects many people tried. The chimney itself is crude. Stone stacked with mud. Gaps sealed poorly. Smoke stains the wall above it. When the wind changes, a stream of smoke curls into the room, slow and unpleasant. Your eyes sting. You cough once, softly. People lived with this. Long winter nights in cramped, smoky rooms could worsen coughs and illness, especially for children and the elderly. Yet without the fire, the room could turn deadly. So the smoke was endured, cursed under the breath, and accepted as part of the bargain. You place another log carefully. It pops as frost or dampness inside the wood meets heat. A spark rises. You watch it vanish before it reaches the darkness above. The room brightens a little. Shadows move across the sleeping bundle. A hand appears from under a quilt, then disappears again. Someone sighs. Near the wall sits the woodpile. Each log is a stored hour of warmth. Each one once had to be cut, hauled, split, stacked, and kept dry. Running out of wood in a cold snap was not inconvenience. It was danger. Families prepared before snow came, but winter could be longer than planning. Storms could trap a household. Wood could burn faster than expected. A chimney could draw poorly. A damp log could smolder instead of flame. Where trees were scarce, some settlers used dried animal dung as fuel. It burned, though it brought its own scent and indignity. Historians debate how common that practice was in different places, but the basic truth is simple. When cold is serious, people become practical. Pride is poor insulation. The night deepens. You imagine yourself as the watcher. You sit near the door with a blanket over your shoulders and the poker beside you. The sleeping household is behind you, warm only because the fire is still alive. The door is latched, but the latch feels small against the wide dark outside. The oiled cloth window trembles faintly. The wind slips through the wall seams in thin, cold threads. You listen. Listening is work here. A sound outside could be snow sliding from the roof. It could be a branch. It could be a coyote, a wolf, a horse moving in the shed, a neighbor crossing the settlement, or nothing at all, except wind discovering a new shape. The plains distort sound. Distance becomes uncertain. A howl may seem close enough to touch and be far away. A footstep may be only ice cracking under pressure. Still, the body reacts before the mind has finished deciding. Your shoulders tighten. A long cry rises beyond the cabins. It begins low, then lifts, then fades into the cold. Another answers, farther off, or perhaps the wind carries the same cry back differently. Wolves were feared and respected. They did not spend every night throwing themselves at cabin doors like villains in a cheap tale, but their voices reminded settlers of exposure, of animals outside the walls. of livestock vulnerable in sheds, of the thinness of human shelter on a continent that had no obligation to be kind. Behind you, someone shifts in the bed. You turn your head, but they sleep on. The fire drops slightly. You stir it again. This repetition becomes almost hypnotic. Listen. Stir. Add wood. Listen again. Watch the window. Watch the door. Feel your eyelids grow heavy. Stand and pace 3 steps. Sit again. Rub warmth into your fingers. Resist the sweet pull of sleep, because the room depends on you noticing what happens next. Some settlers sang softly while tending the fire. Others recited prayers, poems, or remembered verses. A low voice could help keep a person awake. It might also make the room feel less lonely. There are mentions in frontier memory of people speaking to the fire as if it listened. We cannot always know where superstition ends and exhaustion begins. But after midnight, when the wind is talking through the cracks and everyone else is bundled into a breathing mound, a fire can seem like the only companion willing to answer. You hum under your breath. Nothing elaborate. Just a line of sound, low and steady. The flame moves with the draft. For a moment, it almost appears to lean closer. The hardest time comes before dawn. The cold deepens. The fire wants to sink. The body wants sleep. The world outside seems to have stopped moving, yet the chill grows sharper, as if winter is pressing its final argument against the walls. This is when frost thickens. This is when the roof complains. This is when a watcher might stand because sitting has become too dangerous. You rise. The floor is hard. Your legs ache. You step to the door and place a hand against it. The wood is cold enough to sting. You listen through it. Wind. Snow. A distant creek. The settlement beyond is hidden in darkness. Each cabin holds its own small island of breath and ember. There is a strange tenderness in that thought. All across the frontier, families lay in rough cabins under rougher roofs, doing the same quiet calculations. How much wood remains? How low is the fire? How cold is the child? How hard is the wind? How long until dawn? No grand speech. No heroic pose. Only watchfulness. At last, someone from the bedding stirs. A shape rises slowly, wrapped in quilt and coat, hair flattened, eyes half closed. They come toward the hearth without speaking. You pass them the poker. The exchange is simple. Your turn. Their turn. The fire continues. You return to the bedding. The warm pocket has not completely vanished. You lift the buffalo robe and slide under. Cold air enters with you, and someone makes a soft, irritated sound. Fair enough. You tuck the edge quickly. Your feet search for warmth, for finding a place where another body has heated the straw. The robe settles back over the pile. The watcher takes your place by the fire. You can hear the poker move through the coals. You can hear the log catch. You can hear the wind try the walls again and fail. For now, your body loosens. The crowded bed feels less awkward now, and more like a raft. Everyone in it is crossing the same black river of winter together. Elbows, snores, cold feet, smoky blankets, all forgiven by necessity. Shared warmth is a kind of language. It says, "Stay close, stay alive. Morning will come." The fire brightens once more. Red light moves across the roof beams. Smoke curls. Snow brushes the walls. Outside, the wolves or the wind continue their distant song. Inside, one person watches while the others breathe. This is how sleep survives the frontier. Not alone. Not fully. Not peacefully in the modern sense. Sleep comes in guarded pieces, held between bodies and embers, between duty and exhaustion, between the long dark and the promise of gray light. You close your eyes. The cabin creaks, but holds. The fire whispers, but lives. And in that narrow margin, the whole household rests. The household rests, but the plains do not. Even when the fire is alive, even when bodies are gathered under quilts and hides, even when the watchkeeper sits near the hearth with heavy eyes, the outside world continues its long winter speech. It speaks through wind, through snow, through wood under pressure, through ice cracking somewhere too far away to see and too close to ignore. You lie beneath the buffalo robe, half awake, half warmed, and listen. At first, there is only the fire. A small snap, a low hiss, a log shifting in the coals. Then the cabin answers with a slow creak in the beams above you. It moves from one end of the roof to the other, soft and stretched, like an old floorboard being tested by an unseen foot. You open your eyes. The room is dim. The hearth throws only enough light to make the shadows breathe. The oiled cloth window trembles in its frame. It is not glass. Glass would be too costly, too fragile, too hard to bring this far in the first rough season of settlement. Instead, the window is covered with cloth rubbed with oil or grease, enough to let in a little weak daylight, enough to keep out some wind, but never all of it. At night, it becomes a pale square in the wall, a thin membrane between human breath and the enormous cold. A gust presses against it. The cloth bows inward, then relaxes. A faint tapping begins along the frame. Not loud, not alarming by itself. But on the frontier, a small sound rarely stays small in the mind. It becomes a question. Is that only wind? Is the cloth loosening? Is snow building near the sill? Is something outside brushing the wall? You rise slowly, careful not to pull the warm pocket of air out from under the robe. It escapes anyway. Cold moves into the gap like water. You wrap the quilt around your shoulders and cross the floor. The earth is hard beneath your boots. Straw whispers as you pass. When you reach the window, you press your palm to the cloth. It is stiff, waxy, and cold. A faint smell of oil and smoke clings to it. Your breath fogs the surface in a pale circle. It fades, forms again, fades again. Around the edges, The draft slips through in narrow threads. You feel it on your wrist. A thin, cold line as sharp as a blade of grass. Settlers used whatever they had to seal windows like this. Rags, moss, extra cloth. Sometimes a shutter of rough wood if they had the materials. A family might hang a quilt over the opening at night, not for privacy, but to stop the wind from passing over sleeping faces. Yet even then, the cold found ways in. It always did. You take a folded strip of fabric from a peg and tuck it along the side of the frame. The tapping softens. The draft does not vanish, but it becomes less cruel. That is often the best a cabin can offer. You let the cloth fall back into place and listen. Outside, the plains are speaking. The wind moves across snow and frozen grass in waves. Sometimes it whistles. Sometimes it moans. Sometimes it drags loose ice against the wall with a dry scratching sound that resembles fingernails more than any tired person would prefer. The open plains distort distance. A howl far away may seem close. A crack nearby may sound as if it came from the horizon. The land becomes a ventriloquist. You stand very still. A long, low sound rolls through the dark, too deep for an animal cry, too distant for a branch against the roof. Perhaps ice cracking on a river. Perhaps frozen earth shifting. Perhaps thunder traveling strangely over hard ground. Settlers wrote of such winter sounds with a mixture of practicality and awe. They learned to sort them by experience. But even experience did not solve every noise. The cabin answers again. A beam above you tightens and releases with a hollow pop. The wall near the bed gives a quiet tick. The door rattles once in its latch. You can almost imagine the structure breathing, inhaling vent, exhaling smoke, resisting collapse by stubborn habit. You walk to the wall and see the frost. It has formed inside, not outside the cabin, where it would belong politely. Inside, it gathers along the lower logs, in delicate white patterns that look almost too beautiful for what they mean. Feathers, fells, tiny rivers frozen in mid-flow. At the corner, the crystals grow thicker, where cold air pools and breath from the room meets it. You touch one pattern with a fingertip. It melts instantly, becoming a droplet that runs down the wood and darkens the grain. The cold beneath remains. Frost inside frontier cabins was common enough that some diaries mention it almost casually. Blankets could stiffen with it. Hair could gather it. Breath could freeze near the face in the coldest hours. A cup of water left too far from the fire might be solid by morning. The wall glitters in the firelight. For one soft moment it is beautiful. Then the meaning returns. The frost is proof that the cabin has not defeated winter. It has only slowed it. You kneel and look closer. Your breath feeds the crystals. The pale patterns fog, melt, and sharpen again. You imagine a child tracing pictures in frost at dawn, making animals or letters with one warm finger. It is easy to see the charm. It is also easy to imagine a parent waking with worry when the wall glitters too brightly, because beauty is not always harmless. Behind you, the firekeeper stirs the coals. The light grows warmer. The frost near the hearth dulls a little, but does not disappear. The far wall remains white. Then the roof groans. This time everyone hears it. The sleeping bundle shifts. Someone lifts their head. No one speaks at first. The sound comes again, slow and heavy, moving across the beams above you. Snow has gathered on the roof. Perhaps it settled softly all night. Perhaps wind drove it against one side, making the weight uneven. A rough cabin built in haste may hold, or it may complain until someone takes notice. The roof groans a third time. You imagine the snow above, dense and pale, pressing downward, layer upon layer. The shingles or bark beneath it cold and stiff. The beams holding because they must. In stormy winters, families sometimes went outside with poles or shovels to clear roofs. Some used long sticks from the ground. Some listened and judged whether the risk of going outside was worse than the risk of waiting. The firekeeper stands. The room becomes alert in that quiet way households do when danger may or may not be real. A child turns under the blanket. Someone reaches for a coat. You move closer to the hearth and listen upward. A soft rush slides along the roof. Snow moving. It flows down one side with a muffled shushing sound and lands outside in a heavy thump. The cabin trembles slightly, then settles. The beam no longer groans as deeply. A collective breath seems to pass through the room, though no one says anything. Relief can be silent when everyone is too tired to celebrate. You lift the oiled cloth again and look out. Moonlight catches the fresh mound of snow against the wall. The drift rises high, smooth and blue-white. It has buried part of the window from below. If the storm grows stronger, the door may be next. You lower the cloth and let the room return to dimness. The planes continue their strange music. A distant cry threads through the wind. It may be a wolf, or a coyote, or only the land-bending sound into a shape the mind recognizes too quickly. Frontier nights did that. They made listeners into storytellers. Every scratch became a paw. Every thump became a visitor. Every silence became something waiting. You return to the bedding. As you pass the wall, you see frost growing again over the place you touched. The small melted streak is already hardening at the edges. Winter repairs itself quickly. You slide beneath the buffalo robe, careful to tuck the edges. The cold follows you briefly. Then the layers begin to close around your body. The robe holds. The quilt softens. The straw shifts beneath you, no longer surprising, only familiar in its discomfort. The window taps again, quieter now. The roof settles above. The firekeeper sits down by the hearth, poker resting across their knees. You close your eyes. The sounds remain. Wind at the cloth, snow against the wall, frost forming without a sound, beams speaking softly in the dark. The plains stretching beyond the cabin like a white ocean no one can cross tonight. You begin to understand that settlers did not sleep through winter noise. They slept inside it. They learned its grammar the way a sailor learns water. Which sounds meant danger, which meant weather, which meant nothing, which could not be known until morning. You pull the robe higher and keep listening. A faint scratching begins near the lower wall, so light that at first it could be your own sleeve against the quilt. Then it repeats. A dry whisper. Snow crystals being driven across the logs. Or perhaps the edge of a frozen weed brushing the corner outside. In daylight, it would be nothing. At night, it becomes a visitor without a name. This is why frontier sleep stayed shallow. A modern room teaches the body that walls are firm. Windows seal. Heat will continue. And strange sounds belong elsewhere. This cabin teaches another lesson. Walls are work. Windows are suggestions. Heat is temporary. The outside is only a few inches away. The mind learns to sleep with one ear left open. You look toward the ceiling again. A small icicle hangs where warm air from the room met a crack and froze before it could leave. It catches firelight for a moment, clear and sharp as a glass tooth. Then a drop forms at its tip, tremble, and falls to the earth floor with a sound so tiny you feel rather than hear it. The cold makes even small things dramatic. Near the hearth, a kettle sends up a weak thread of steam. The steam rises, meets the cold air above, and disappears. It is a small lesson in failure, but a graceful one. Warmth climbs. Winter takes it. Warmth climbs again. You settle back, and the bed accepts your weight with a low straw murmur. Somewhere outside, the plains open endlessly in every direction. No trees close enough to break the wind. No hill near enough to soften the sound. Snow carries noise. Frozen ground carries vibration. A horse moving in a shed. A loose board. A distant animal. Ice shifting along a creek. All of it may arrive at the cabin strangely changed. The settler must become interpreter of a language that never agrees to repeat itself exactly. You can imagine a child whispering from under a quilt, asking what that sound was, and an adult answering, just the wind. Sometimes that is comfort. Sometimes it is only the best answer available. A final gust brushes the window. The cloth lifts and falls. The cabin holds. For now, that is enough. And as you sink back into shallow rest, the frost continues its patient work on the walls, writing winter in white letters no one asked to read. The frost keeps writing on the walls, but the people inside answer with small rituals. Not grand rituals. Not the kind with bells or robes or polished floors. These are the quiet rites of frontier sleep. A stone set near the fire. A quilt shaken once more. A latch checked by hand. A cup warmed. A candle saved. A tool placed within reach. Each act is plain. Together they make a thin border against the night. You rise again when the room has settled. The fire is low but steady. Near the hearth, several stones rest in a small pile. At first they look ordinary, round and gray, gathered perhaps from a creek bed or from a field before snow covered everything. But tonight they are bedtime technology. Simple, old, and very serious. You crouch beside them and choose one. It is smooth, heavy, and cold in your palm. You set it near the coals, not directly inside the hottest flame, because a damp stone can crack if heated too quickly. Some families preferred certain stones, river stones, sun-baked stones, stones that seemed to hold warmth longer. Whether those preferences were practical truth or household belief is hard to say. But people who live by small comforts become careful observers of small differences. The stone begins to warm. Condensation gathers on its surface, then vanishes. Firelight crawls over its gray skin. You turn it with a folded cloth. Heat seeps through the fabric and into your fingers, slow and pleasant. After a few minutes, it becomes almost too warm to hold. You carry it to the bedding and slide it beneath the lower quilt, near where feet will search for mercy later. The warmth spreads under the fabric. Not far, not dramatically. A small, hidden sun, no larger than your two hands. But when you press the buffalo robe above it, heat rises through the fur in a gentle wave. The bed that had been cold and resistant now holds one secret place of welcome. You warm another stone. This one you wrap more carefully. There are stories of stones placed too hot into bedding, scorching quilts or waking sleepers with sudden alarm. The image is almost funny, if nobody loses the blanket. A tired settler, proud of their cleverness, tucks in a stone, lies down, smells smoke, and discovers that winter is not the only thing trying to ruin the night. Still, the practice is wise. A heated stone can stay warm for hours. It can soothe feet, loosen stiff joints, and give the body enough comfort to fall asleep before the room steals courage again. Children might be given smaller ones. Adults might place them at the foot of the bed. Some households used wrapped bricks, warmed boards, or ember boxes, though anything involving coals carried danger. Fire is a friend only when watched. You tuck the second stone near the middle of the bedding. Then the room turns toward the rest of its nightly order. A candle sits on a small shelf. Onlit. Tallow candles were precious and smoky, made from rendered animal fat, and not something to waste because someone wanted a little atmosphere. Firelight usually had to do the work. A candle might be saved for illness, a repair, a birth, a storm, or any moment when flame needed to be carried from one place to another. You touched the candle with one finger. It is cold and slightly greasy. Its wick is stiff. In some severe cold, a candle might need to be warmed before it caught properly. Some families set them near the hearth for a short while. Not too near. Everything in this cabin has a correct distance from fire, learned by experience and occasional regret. On the table is a cup. You pour warm water from the kettle. It is not hot enough to burn, only warm enough to feel civilized. Steam rises, faint and silver in the firelight. The water smells of iron, smoke, and perhaps herbs from the pot. Some households drank warm water, broth, or herbal infusions before bed. Mint, sayi, chamomile, willow bark when available, and other plants gathered, traded, or remembered from older traditions. We cannot always know which remedies helped and which simply comforted. But comfort has its own medicine when the night is long. You sip. The warmth moves down the throat and into the chest. It is small. It is enough. A bundle of dried herbs hangs near the hearth. You lift it gently. The leaves crackle. A faint smell rises, earthy and clean. Sage, perhaps? Or mint? Or something gathered before frost took the last green from the ground. Families sometimes hung herbs for scent, for remedies, for memory, or for beliefs carried from old homes into new hardship. The cabin smells a little less like smoke when you crush one dry leaf between finger and thumb. Honestly, that seems reason enough. You place it back. Then you check the door. The wooden latch slides into place with a soft thump. It is not a fortress. It would not impress anyone who designs serious locks. But it is a boundary, a gesture, a small sound that says the day is finished and the outside must stay outside as much as possible. You tug once to test it. The door holds. Beside it leans a wooden club, shaped from a branch, rough and plain. On the wall hangs a hatchet. Near the bedding, a small knife rests in its sheath. Tools stayed close in winter cabins, because night could demand anything. Cutting rope, splitting, kindling, trimming frozen cloth, defending against an animal at the door, or simply holding something solid when the mind heard too many sounds in the dark. You lift the hatchet briefly. The handle is smooth from hands. The blade is duller than it should be, but still useful. You set it back. Tools like this were not always signs of fear. They were signs of readiness. On the frontier, a sleeping household wanted the world within reach. Fire, blade, water, quat, boots, and each other. Then a cough crosses the room. Thin, human, tired. Everyone hears it, but no one startles. Illness is part of winter, and in a one-room cabin, one person's cough belongs to everyone by morning. Cramped air, smoke, damp clothing, weak food, little privacy, and deep cold made sickness a constant concern. A simple cough could become a household vigil. You turn toward the bedding. A child or perhaps a younger family member lies near the wall, bundled under quilts, face pale in the firelight. Another cough comes, deeper this time. Someone rises from the sleeping pile and moves toward the kettle. No one speaks loudly. Night care has a quiet language. The warm cup returns. A little herbal water. A hand supporting the shoulder. A blanket tucked closer under the chin. A palm pressed to the brow. These motions are old and practical. They may not cure. They comfort. And when comfort is all a family has, it becomes precise. You watch the quilt being adjusted around the sick sleeper. The fabric is rough, but the gesture is gentle. The fire is stirred again. Not for everyone now, but for this one person who needs the room a little warmer. Another log is added. The wood must be saved. The choice is made without ceremony. A cabin teaches priorities. Outside, Mahaya gust presses snow against the wall. Inside, someone holds a cup until another hand is ready for it. The sick person drinks, coughs once more, then settles. The room releases its breath slowly. You return to the bedding. The heated stones are still warm beneath the layers. One rests near the feet, one near the middle. You slide your hand over the robe and find their positions by touch. The warmth blooms upward, dim but steady. You imagine a family doing this every night through winter. Stones warmed, coals banked, door checked, cup poured, child covered, tools near hand, candles saved, fire watched. Repetition becomes protection. Before lying down fully, you check the boots. They sit near the bed. Turn toward the hearth so they will not freeze as hard before morning. Boots left too far from the fire could stiffen until pulling them on became a small punishment. You touch one and feel that it is still cold, but not solid. A small success, worthy of no celebration and yet deeply useful. A coat lies folded at the foot of the bedding. It will serve as another blanket if the fire falls too low. Nothing in this room has one purpose only. A coat is a coat by day, a blanket by night, a pillow when needed, a wall covering in a draft, a bundle for carrying food. Frontier objects earn their place by doing more than they were asked. You sit for a moment before getting under the covers. The room smells of smoke, wool, herbs, warm stone, and damp clothing drying too slowly. It is not a pleasant scent in the clean sense, but it is the scent of people continuing. There is a kind of peace in that. Not pretty peace. Working peace. The sick sleeper turns once, then settles. A hand reaches from another blanket and pats the quilt over them without anyone fully waking. Care has become instinct. Even half asleep, the household knows how to close a gap, cover a shoulder, pull warmth back over a body. You look once more at the unlit candle. It waits with its wick bent to one side. If the fire failed, if illness worsened, if a sound outside needed checking, the candle might be used. Until then, darkness is cheaper. It is strange to think of darkness as a household economy, but out here, even light must be rationed. Then you lower yourself down. Slowly, because moving too fast releases warmth. Slowly, because every fold must be sealed. You lower yourself onto the straw. It crackles under the quilt. The feather tick near your shoulder shifts softly. You tuck your legs toward one of the stones and feel immediate relief. Heat gathers at your toes. A small pleasure, but strong enough to change the mood of the whole body. The cold is still here, circling the bedding, waiting near the walls, lying along the floor. But it cannot reach the place where your feet have found the stone. The fire glows. The oiled window taps, but faintly. The sick sleeper breathes unevenly, then more slowly. Someone sits nearby for a while, listening. In Franchi homes, sleep often came in pieces because care could not be scheduled neatly. A cough woke a parent. A crying child woke a sibling. A draft woke the old. A dying ember woke whoever noticed. Rest was interrupted, but not abandoned. You pull the quilt higher. The scent of sage lingers near your chin. Smoke has settled into the wool. The buffalo robe presses down with its heavy patience. The stone warms the soles of your feet. The knife rests near the bedding, not threatening, just present. The latch holds. The candle remains unburned. All the small rites are complete. The cabin is ready for sleep as much as it can be. You close your eyes and listen to the room. Fire, breath, cough fading, cloth shifting, wind outside, frost forming, someone whispering a word too soft to catch. Perhaps a prayer, perhaps only a name. There is no perfect safety here. No deep, guaranteed comfort. No warm room sealed against the season. Only arrangements. Each one modest. Each one necessary. And yet, somehow, they work. A heated stone, a guarded coal, a folded quilt, a tightened latch, a hand on a fevered brow. The frontier night is large, but human care is persistent. It moves quietly from object to object, from sleeper to sleeper, from ember to blanket, until the cabin becomes more than rough wood. It becomes a shelter made of attention. Your breathing slows. The warmth at your feet begins to fade, but not yet. The fire lowers, but not yet. The cough has softened. For now, the plains wait beyond the walls, wide, white, and merciless. Inside, under fur and wool, the household drifts again into guarded sleep. The night may return with new demands. But for this hour, the stones are warm, the door is latched, and the fire still remembers how to glow. The night may return with new demands, and it does. You wake because your body remembers something before your mind does. A small pressure, a practical need, one of the oldest humiliations of winter life. The outhouse. For a moment, you lie perfectly still beneath the buffalo robe, hoping the feeling will pass, as if the body might accept negotiation. It does not. The cabin is dark. The fire is a low red glow. The heated stone near your feet has cooled to a stubborn memory of warmth. Around you, the sleeping household breathes in uneven waves. Someone coughs once, softly. The wind presses against the wall and then withdraws. You sit up. Cold gathers instantly around your neck and wrists. It seems to have been waiting just above the blanket, patient as a creditor. You pull the quilt around your shoulders and reach for your boots. They are near the hearth, but still hard with cold. You push one foot in and feel the leather resist. Then the other. The laces are stiff. Your fingers work slowly, clumsy from sleep and chill. No one enjoys this journey. Frontier letters and memories often joke about it, but the humor is thin. The kind people use, because the alternative is admitting misery too plainly. The outhouse waits several yards away, and in deep winter, several yards can feel like a pilgrimage through judgment. You take your coat from the peg The fabric is cold at first, then begins to warm against you. You wrap a scarf around your throat. You glance at the hearth. The coals are alive, but faint. You hesitate. Then add one small piece of wood, just enough to keep the room from sinking too far while you are gone. The door latch lifts with a dry wooden sound. You open the door. The cold enters before you do. It comes in with such force that the cabin seems to flinch. The air outside is blue-black and hard. Moonlight lies over the snow, turning every drift into a pale shape without mercy. You step out and close the door quickly behind you, because every second it stands open steals warmth from the sleepers inside. Your boots sink into the packed path. The snow crunches sharply. The sound travels farther than you want it to. The path to the outhouse has been trampled, perhaps shoveled, perhaps packed down by many unwilling journeys. On some homesteads, families work to keep such paths open each day, because snow could erase them overnight. The path must be kept, even for the least poetic chores of life. You move forward. The cold touches your face, then your lungs. Each breath enters like glass water. You keep your head lowered. The outhouse stands ahead, a small, dark box against the white ground. Its door trembles slightly in the wind. The whole thing looks too thin to deserve trust. A cry sounds far away. Perhaps coyote. Perhaps owl. Perhaps a branch splitting under frost. You pause, listen, then continue. At night, the plains make every simple act feel watched. This is not because something always waits outside. Often, nothing waits. That can be worse, because the mind supplies what the darkness refuses to show. You reach the outhouse. The latch is cold. The door opens with a groan. Inside, the air is darker and somehow colder, sheltered from the wind, yet full of a stillness that feels solid. The wooden seat is unforgiving. Some accounts mention people warming seats with stones, or using cloth, or simply moving quickly and trying not to think too much about it. Whether every family did such things is uncertain. The need itself is not uncertain. You do what must be done. There is no dignity here, only speed. Your breath fogs and falls. Your fingers burn with cold. The boards creak under you. The wind slips through cracks as if amused by the entire arrangement. You think, very sincerely, that modern indoor plumbing is one of civilization's great lullabies. Then you step back into the moonlit cold. The cabin light is small but beautiful. A faint glow through oiled cloth. A promise that walls exist, however imperfectly. You hurry now. Snow crunches faster underfoot. Your coat flaps once in the wind. By the time you reach the door, your cheeks ache and your toes feel distant. Inside, the cabin feels almost warm. Almost. You close the door and press the latch down. You remove your boots slowly, trying not to wake anyone. Then you slip back under the layers. The cold follows you into the bedding at first, sliding along your legs and ribs, but the quilts close around it. Your feet find the place where the stone had been warm. Only a little heat remains. It is enough to feel like kindness. You are nearly asleep again when the roof groans. Not the small creak of settling wood. A deeper sound. A weight sound. You open your eyes. The groan comes again, slow and heavy, rolling through the beams above. Snow has gathered on the roof. Perhaps the storm has returned while you slept. Perhaps drifting wind has piled it unevenly. Hasty cabins could suffer under heavy snow, and settlers knew to listen. A roof did not always fail suddenly. Sometimes it warned first, in long, wooden complaints. You sit up and listen. A muffled slide moves overhead. Then a thump outside as snow falls from one edge. The cabin trembles gently and stills. The firelight shakes across the beams. Frost glitters along them like powdered bone. Someone else wakes. A shape rises from the bedding, wrapped in a quilt. No one speaks loudly. There is no need. Everyone understands the sound. The roof is asking to be noticed. You stand and cross to the center of the room. Your eyes follow the beams. They are uneven. Hand-cut, made by people racing weather. Above them lies snow, perhaps light, perhaps heavy enough to require action. In some storms, families went out with poles to push snow away. Some tied ropes around one another in deep drifts. Some trusted the roof, because stepping outside was worse. Tonight, you listen. Another groan. Then another slide. A softer one. Snow moving down the slope. The sound is like cloth being pulled over rough wood. You go to the window and lift the cloth just enough to look out. White motion fills the dark. Snow blows sideways in sheets. The mound against the wall has grown higher. The door may be blocked by morning if no one checks it. You lower the cloth. The room feels smaller. A storm can make a cabin shrink without moving its walls. The outside disappears, and the one room becomes all there is. Hearth, bed, table, tools, food, breath, fear, patience. You take a shovel from near the wall and set it by the door. Not to go out yet. Only to be ready. That readiness matters. A shovel within reach can feel almost like a prayer with a handle. Hours pass in pieces. You doze, then wake to the roof. Doze, then wake to wind. At some point, the sound outside thickens into a steady roar. Snow pushes against the cabin. The door resists when tested. Not sealed fully, but pressured. You press your shoulder to it and feel the packed weight beyond. The storm is building. By gray morning, the door opens only a little. Snow presses against the lower half. You push. It moves an inch, then stops. You kneel and scrape with the shovel through the gap, pulling snow inward in cold clumps. It spills across the floor, bright and strange against the dark earth. You work slowly, because the space is narrow and the cold rushes in every time the gap widens. The wind outside shouts through the opening. You clear enough to see the drift. It rises almost to the latch. The path to the outhouse has vanished. The world beyond the cabin is white, moving, and unreadable. You close the door again. No one says what everyone knows. You may not leave for some time. Cabin fever begins quietly. It is not madness at first. It is repetition. The same wall, the same roof beam, the same cough, the same crack in the chinking, the same pot, the same bed, the same people, too near and too dear, and sometimes too loud, simply by breathing. Long storms could trap families for days, and the mind, like the body, needs room to move. You sit near the fire and watch a child trace shapes in frost. A circle, a crooked bird, a line that becomes nothing. The child smiles, then wipes the hand on a blanket. Someone mends a sleeve. Someone sharpens a tool. Someone tells a story already told yesterday, and everyone listens anyway because yesterday has returned wearing today's snow. Hunger becomes part of the room. Not severe at first, a hollow reminder. The body burns more in cold, but supplies must stretch. A pot of stew waits near the hearth. Beans, dried corn, a scrap of meat if fortune has been kind. Perhaps a few herbs, perhaps only salt and memory. Winter food often became repetitive. People ate what lasted. Variety belonged to summer and trade. You stir the pot. Steam rises slowly. The smell is earthy and plain. You ladle a little into a wooden bowl. It is warm, thick, and humble. You chew a piece of hard biscuit with care, because it offers resistance like a small plank. The stew spreads heat down into the stomach. It does not delight you. It steadies you. Some families rationed carefully during storms, counting dried apples, cornmeal, beans, flour, salt pork, and coffee if they had it. Hunger could shape dreams. Warm bread, roasted meat, summer berries, a table from a home left behind. The mind cooked feasts while the pot held beans. The storm continues. The roof groans less now, perhaps because snow has slid, perhaps because you have grown used to it. The wind still presses at the window. The door remains checked every few hours. The shovel stands nearby. The fire must be fed carefully, because being trapped means every log is a number in a quiet equation. You notice how the family changes as the day lengthens. Voices grow softer, then sharper, then soft again. A child becomes restless. An adult ooms. Someone laughs at the wrong moment, and the laughter is more relief than amusement. Someone apologizes. The cabin holds all of it. Fatigue, irritation, affection, hunger, worry, warmth. This, too, is frontier sleep, though no one is sleeping yet. It is the preparation for sleep under confinement. It is learning that rest cannot come unless the mind accepts the walls for one more night. So people make routines. They mend. They sweep. They tell stories. They check the roof. They ration food. They warm stones. They make the known world orderly because the storm outside has become formless. At evening, the snow still falls. The cabin is half buried but standing. You clear the lower door again, enough to keep it from sealing. You return with frozen hands and a dusting of snow on your sleeves. Someone gives you warm water. Someone has moved a stone near the fire. Someone has tucked another quilt around the sick sleeper. The room glows. Not brightly. Never brightly. But with a working glow. An ember glow. A human glow. You sit on the edge of the bedding and listen to the storm press against the walls. The roof gives a low sound, but it holds. The door sighs, but it holds. The window cloth flutters, but it holds. The people inside are tired, hungry, crowded, and cold around the edges. But they are inside. That is the victory. You pull the robe over your knees. The stew warms your stomach. The shovel waits by the door. The fire has enough wood for now. Outside, winter piles itself higher against the walls, trying to close every path. Inside, the cabin answers in embers, blankets, and breath. And for another night, it refuses to disappear. The storm eases before anyone fully believes it. At first, the sound only changes. The wind loses its sharp edge. Snow no longer slaps the walls with the same restless force. The roof stops groaning and settles into a quieter weight. Inside the cabin, no one announces that it is over. People have learned not to trust winter too early. Morning comes slowly. The oiled cloth window glows with a weak silver light. The fire is low, but alive. The air smells of smoke, damp wool, stew, and the faint sourness of many people shut inside too long. You sit up beneath the buffalo robe and listen. No howl. No roof warning. No hard rush of snow against the door. Only the small sounds of the household waking, cloth shifting, straw crackling, a cup being moved near the hearth. The cabin has held. That simple fact lands with quiet force. You rise and cross to the door. The shovel is still there, leaning beside it, handle smooth from use. You lift the latch and push. Snow resists, but less than before. You scrape the lower edge, push again, and the door opens enough for light to spill in across the packed earth floor. The outside world is white and reshaped. The path is gone. The woodpile is half buried. The outhouse is only a dark roof and a suggestion of walls. The nearby cabins look smaller, pressed low by snow, but smoke rises from some of them. Thin, gray, beautiful smoke, a sign that other fires survived the night. You step out carefully. The air is bitter, but still. Snow squeaks under your boots. Each breath enters sharp and leaves pale. The settlement has become quiet in a different way. Not threatening now, just stunned. Storms can make the world look newly made, as if every old mistake has been covered for a few hours in clean white cloth. Then a door opens nearby. A neighbor appears, wrapped in layers, carrying a shovel. Another figure follows from a cabin farther off. Nobody waves grandly. They lift a hand, small and tired. Work begins. Paths must be dug. Roofs must be checked. Animals must be found and fed. Wood must be uncovered. The storm may be past, but survival always leaves chores behind. You return inside for a moment. The cabin seems warmer now because outside has reminded you what it kept away. Someone stirs the stew again. Someone shakes a quilt near the hearth. Someone checks the sick sleeper and nods with relief. The cough remains, but softer. The room breathes easier. Near the table lies a small leather pouch. Inside are coins, a few buttons, perhaps a bead, perhaps a written list if someone in the household can spare paper. Needed things. Salt, flour, coffee, needles, cloth, a better kettle. Medicine, if any, can be found. Perhaps more candles. Perhaps nails. Perhaps a stronger latch. Trading posts were winter lifelines, when a family could reach them. They were not merely places of business. They were connections to supplies, news, mail, rumor, and proof that the world outside the cabin still existed. But no one travels today unless they must. The snow is too deep. The paths uncertain. So the pouch is closed again. It waits for safer weather. A sound comes at the door. Not whined this time. A knock. Everyone turns. The latch lifts, and a traveler stands there, wrapped in frost, face reddened by cold, beard or scarf rimmed in white. He has crossed some distance in the storm or its aftermath, perhaps from another homestead, perhaps from a wagon caught out too late, perhaps from a small work camp farther away. His shoulders sag in the way cold makes a person smaller. No one asks many questions at first. He is brought inside. Hospitality in this world is not fancy. It is a place near the fire, a cup of warm water, a corner of a quilt, maybe stew if the pot can spare it. The traveler kneels by the hearth and holds out his hands. Steam rises from his sleeves as frost begins to melt. His boots leave dark marks on the floor. He apologizes for the water, and someone tells him not to be foolish. The cabin grows more crowded, but also more human. This is another kind of warmth. Shared information arrives with him. The road is bad. The creek crossing is frozen but uncertain. A neighbor to the east lost part of a shed roof. The trading path may be blocked for days. A family farther south has smoke rising, so they are likely well. News becomes comfort when silence has been heavy. Outside, animals begin to call. A low sound from the shed. A horse shifting. Perhaps a cow. Perhaps goats or chickens if the family keeps them. In severe cold, animals were sometimes kept close to cabins, in attached sheds, lean-tos, or spaces where their body heat helped the general shelter. Not always inside the living room, though some stories suggest animals came closer than modern noses might prefer. The line between house and barn could blur when warmth was needed. You walk to the small attached shed. The air changes at once. Hay, hide, animal breath, manure, damp wood, and warm bodies. It is not clean, but it is alive. A horse exhales, and the breath rolls white in the dimness. A cow shifts, its side radiating steady heat. Straw underfoot holds warmth better than the cabin floor. In terrible weather, even standing near livestock could remind a person that the world still contained living heat. Children sometimes loved this. Adults were more practical about it. Warmth from animals was useful, but animals brought smell, dampness, and mess. Survival is rarely tidy enough for postcards. You rest a hand lightly against the rough wooden divider. The animal on the other side shifts and breathes. The warmth is surprising. A living wall. You understand why a family might move bedding closer to such a space during extreme cold, or let a dog curl at the foot of the bed, or tolerate a goat in a place where a goat would not normally be invited. Winter adjusts standards with impressive confidence. Back inside, the traveler has taken a bowl of stew. The fire has brightened. More people are awake now. One person patches the wall where a draft returned during the storm. Mud, straff, cloth, pressed into the seam. Another checks the oiled window, adding a strip of fabric at the edge. Someone goes outside with a pole to knock snow from the roof. The cabin is no longer only a sleeping place. It is a workshop of recovery. Repair after storm is part of sleep too. Because tonight will come again. A night of rest depends on the work done in morning light. Chinking must be pressed back. Bedding must be shaken. Wet clothing must be dried. Wood must be gathered from under snow. Stones must be set near the hearth. Food must be counted. Tools must be found before dark. The roof must be watched. The door path must be cleared again before the snow freezes harder. The storm has ended, but winter remains. You help stack wood near the hearth. Each log leaves flakes of snow on the floor, and those melt into dark patches. The traveler thanks the household again, and this time someone asks where he came from. His answer comes slowly, between spoonfuls. The room listens. Not because the story is dramatic, though perhaps it is, but because another voice makes the cabin feel less sealed away from life. Louder. A neighbor comes with news. A roof to the west sagged but held. One family's chickens survived in a barrel of straw. Another household ran low on firewood. Someone may need help once the path is clearer. Even in isolation, the frontier depended on community. Cabins were scattered, but lives overlapped. A person might sleep in one cabin tonight and another tomorrow if weather forced it. A blanket might be lent. A child might be watched. A tool might be borrowed. Survival moved through neighbors as much as through walls. The day passes in work. By afternoon, the cabin has changed again. The floor is damp in places where snow melted. The fire is stronger. The bedding has been lifted, shaken, and aired near the hearth. The buffalo robe hangs for a while, releasing its smoky animal smell into the room. Quilts are inspected for dampness. The straw is stirred and fluffed, though it still looks suspiciously determined to poke someone later. A child laughs at something the traveler says. The sound surprises the room, not because laughter is rare, but because after a storm it feels like thawing. A little warmth that does not come from wood or fur. Evening returns. No one welcomes it exactly, but everyone prepares. The old sequence begins. The door path is checked. The roof is listened to. The fire is banked. Stones are warmed. The stew is stretched. The sick sleeper is given another warm drink. The traveler is assigned a place near the outer edge of the bedding, with apology from both sides and very little space for dignity. The animals settle in the shed. Their breath warms the wall faintly. The dog, if there is one, turns 3 times near the foot of the bed and drops down as if personally responsible for the whole household. Perhaps it is. Every creature with warmth has value. You look around the cabin one final time. It is still crude. The logs are uneven. The chinking is patched in different colors. The window cloth shivers. Frost waits at the lower walls. The roof still holds snow. The floor is hard. The air smells of too many things at once. Smoke, stew, vole, hide, damp wood, herbs, animals, and people. But now you know the room. You know the fire must be tended. You know the robe works best when tucked along the edge. You know the straw complains but insulates. You know the window speaks before a storm. You know frost can be beautiful and dangerous at the same time. You know the roof has a voice. You know a warm stone can feel like treasure. You know a shared bed is awkward until the cold makes it wise. You know a knock at the door may be trouble, or it may be someone who simply needs the same mercy you would need in return. This is how settlers slept. Not comfortably in the way we mean it now. Not safely in the way a sealed room teaches the body to expect. They slept strategically, fully dressed, under layers, beside embers, near tools, with ears open, with bodies close, with hunger managed and fear softened by routine. They slept in pieces, in turns, in brief pockets of warmth, always aware that dawn had to be earned. And yet they slept. That may be the quiet wonder of it. Human beings can make rest in unlikely places. Onstrav, under hides, beside smoke, with snow pressing against the door, with wolves or wind calling beyond the wall, with frost writing on the logs and a roof complaining overhead. They find a way. They tuck the blanket. They share the heat. They stir the fire. They listen, then sleep when listening becomes too heavy to continue. The candle is nearly gone now in our own room. The frontier cabin fades, but not completely. You can still see its small glow in the dark. A rough square of light against the snow. Inside, bodies settle under quilts. A traveler breathes more steadily near the hearth. A child turns toward warmth. The dog sighs. The last log breaks and settles into coals. Outside, winter waits, patient and vast. The settlers have not conquered it. They have only made a truce for one more night. And perhaps that is enough. One night held. One fire kept. One roof still standing. One morning more. Rest now inside that small circle of warmth. The walls are rough, but they hold. The wind is wide, but it stays outside for now. The snow is deep, but the path will be dug again. The fire is low, but there is still red under the ash. Good night,